Welcome to the Real Crime Diary, Daily Dose of Crime. I'm your host, MHB. Today, we're diving into a shocking case that's making headlines, the trial of Sarah Boone. Accused of murdering her boyfriend by trapping him in a suitcase, this story is as bizarre as it is tragic. Let's unravel the details of this extraordinary case. Sarah Boone, a 46-year-old Florida woman, is facing second-degree murder charges in a case that has shocked the nation. The victim? Her boyfriend, 42-year-old Jorge Torres Jr. The alleged murder weapon? A suitcase. According to prosecutors, Boone convinced Torres to get inside a suitcase at their Florida home, then zipped it shut and left him there. When she opened it the next morning, Torres was dead. This chilling incident occurred in 2020, but the trial is only now getting underway. After 4 days of intense jury selection, a panel of 6 jurors and 8 alternates was finally seated last Thursday. The courtroom was tense as Boone made her appearance, dressed in a black suit with a pink blouse, her demeanor calm but guarded as she faced the charges that could potentially put her behind bars for decades. Assistant State Attorney William J. delivered a powerful opening statement, painting a chilling picture of Sarah Boone's alleged actions. He asserted that Boone trapped her boyfriend, Jorge Torres Jr., in a suitcase with malicious intent. Jay's words echoed through the courtroom as he declared, "She did this with the malicious intent to punish him, and then she went up to sleep and left him to take his final breaths on this earth alone." Jay didn't stop there. He drew attention to Boone's 911 call the following day, emphasizing the absence of emotion. "What you will not hear are tears," he stated. "You will not hear sorrow." This portrayal aimed to cast doubt on Boone's remorse and underscore the gravity of her actions. In an effort to make complex legal and medical concepts more accessible to the jury, Jay employed a series of relatable comparisons. He likened expert witnesses to home inspectors and Carfax reports, drawing parallels that the jurors could easily grasp. When discussing medical diagnoses, Jay used a cookbook analogy, stating, "You imagine it's a cookbook. It gives you a recipe for a diagnosis." Jay's closing argument drove home the prosecution's stance. He asserted that the evidence would show Boone killed Torres not out of necessity or self-defense, but because she believed he deserved it. This framing set the stage for a trial that promises to be both emotionally charged and legally complex. Now let's delve into the defense's opening statement, delivered by James Owens, Sarah Boone's 9th lawyer since her arrest in 2020. Owens painted a picture of a troubled relationship, fraught with alcohol abuse and domestic violence. He described Boone and Torres as down and out as you can be, with their lives centered around alcohol. Both suffered from what he referred to as alcohol abuse syndrome, struggling daily with their addiction. Owens then made a startling claim. Jorge Torres physically abused Sarah Boone throughout their 3-year relationship. He argued that Boone suffered from the psychological effects of repeated violence from an intimate partner. Owens portrayed Torres as a jealous man who, when intoxicated, would become sad and moody, often leading to forcible sex or physical violence against Boone. The defense attorney then addressed the night of Torres's death, suggesting that the suitcase incident gave Boone a unique opportunity for a captive audience. Owens claimed that while Torres was physically stronger, the suitcase provided Boone a chance to confront him without fear of retaliation. Contrary to the prosecution's assertion that Boone wanted Torres to die, Owens insisted that she loved him but hated the abuse. He described Boone as weak and vulnerable, lacking family support and unable to leave the relationship despite multiple attempts. In a significant revelation, Owens announced that Sarah Boone will testify in her own defense. This decision could prove pivotal in the trial, allowing jurors to hear directly from the accused and potentially sway their perception of the case. The trial of Sarah Boone has been a roller coaster of legal proceedings. Originally set to begin on October 7th, it was postponed due to Hurricane Milton approaching the area. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the twists and turns in this case. Boone's legal representation has been a revolving door, with James Owens being her 9th lawyer since her arrest in February 2020. Several of her previous attorneys resigned, citing irreconcilable differences. The situation became so dire that in June, Judge Cranick ruled that Boone had forfeited her right to court-appointed counsel. In a surprising move, prosecutors offered Boone a plea deal that would have reduced her potential sentence to 15 years if she pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Boone, however, rejected this offer. Now, if convicted, she faces a minimum sentence of 22.5 years. It's a high-stakes gamble that could dramatically impact her future. The evidence against Sarah Boone is damning, particularly the videos found on her phone. These recordings capture the chilling moments of Jorge Torres Jr.'s final hours, trapped inside a suitcase. In one video, we hear Torres repeatedly calling out Boone's name, his voice muffled but clearly distressed. At one point, he manages to cry out, "I can't fucking breathe, seriously!" It's a haunting piece of evidence that brings the tragedy into sharp focus. But this wasn't an isolated incident in their tumultuous relationship. Both Boone and Torres had a history of domestic violence charges against each other. In July 2018, Boone was charged with battery by strangulation. The following year, Torres faced battery charges 3 times. During one of these incidents, Boone reported that Torres had punched her in the ear and the side of her head. This pattern of violence paints a picture of a volatile relationship that ultimately ended in tragedy. Now, let's take a look at Sarah Boone's communications from behind bars. While in jail, Boone has been quite prolific, writing over a dozen letters to her attorneys and the judge. In these letters, she frequently complains about her legal representation, even going so far as to accuse one lawyer of betrayal. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Boone's jail correspondence is how she managed to secure her current attorney, James Owens. In a desperate bid for new representation, Boone crafted a handmade flyer from her jail cell, advertising her need for a lawyer. It was this unconventional approach that caught Owens' attention and led him to take on her case. And there you have it, folks. The shocking case of Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres Jr. What do you think? Could this tragedy have been prevented? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. And if you're hungry for more, click the link in our show notes to get your hands on the latest crime story books. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. Hey there, true crime enthusiasts. Sean Dupree here, author of Power, Pleasure, and Pain. Ever wonder what connects infamous figures like the Marquis de Sade, Harvey Weinstein, and Jeffrey Epstein? In my book, I unravel the dark thread that ties these powerful men together throughout history. Today, we're diving into Chapter 1, The Libertine's Legacy, a tale of recklessness and redemption. We'll explore how these influential figures have manipulated pleasure, abused their power, and inflicted pain on others. Get ready for a journey that exposes the sinister origins of sexual violence, starting with one of history's most notorious characters, the Marquis de Sade himself. Buckle up, because this story is about to get intense. In Chapter 1, The Libertine's Legacy, a tale of recklessness and redemption, we journey back to 18th century France, where the seeds of exploitation were sown in the decadent world of aristocracy. At the center of this story is the infamous Marquis de Sade, a man whose name has become synonymous with sexual cruelty and libertinism. Sade's life and writings serve as a chilling blueprint for the abuse of power and the objectification of human bodies. His notorious work, The 120 Days of Sodom, wasn't just shocking fiction. It was a reflection of his real-life actions. Sade lived out his darkest fantasies, violating consent and treating people as mere playthings for his pleasure. But Sade's influence didn't end with his death. His legacy cast a long shadow, reaching into our modern era. As we'll discover, the same patterns of exploitation and abuse that Sade embodied can be seen in the actions of contemporary figures like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein. These powerful men, separated by centuries but united in their disregard for human dignity, show us how the past continues to echo in the present. This chapter lays bare the disturbing continuity of power abuse throughout history, revealing how the aristocratic excesses of Sade's time have evolved into the corporate and political abuses we see today. It's a sobering look at how far we've come, and how far we still have to go. Marquis de Sade's legacy casts a long shadow, reaching far beyond 18th century France to influence modern-day exploiters. His acts of cruelty and exploitation set a disturbing precedent that we still see echoed in our world today. Consider Harvey Weinstein, a once powerful Hollywood producer whose years of unchecked abuse were finally exposed during the Me Too movement. Weinstein, like Sade, used his position of power to manipulate and exploit those beneath him in the industry hierarchy. Then there's Jeffrey Epstein, a financier who built a vast network of influence that he used to run a horrific sex trafficking ring. Epstein's case draws eerie parallels to Sade's life, showcasing how wealth and connections can shield predators from consequences for far too long. Both men treated human bodies as mere objects for their pleasure, disregarding the pain and trauma they inflicted on their victims. What's truly chilling is how these powerful figures managed to operate in plain sight for years. Sade's aristocratic status protected him from serious repercussions, just as Weinstein's Hollywood clout and Epstein's financial influence allowed them to evade justice for decades. This pattern of powerful men abusing their status to exploit others is a recurring theme throughout history. The normalization of these power dynamics is precisely why figures like Sade, Weinstein, and Epstein were able to continue their abuse for so long. Society often turns a blind eye to the misdeeds of the powerful, whether out of fear, complicity, or a misguided sense of reverence for status and wealth. In each case, we see a disturbing cycle: the abuse of power, the silencing of victims, and the protection offered by a system that values influence over justice. From Sade's time to our own, the structures that allow such abuse to flourish have remained frustratingly intact. By drawing these connections between historical figures like Sade and contemporary abusers, we can better understand the deep-rooted nature of this problem. It's not just about individual bad actors, but about dismantling the systems that have allowed such abuse to persist across centuries. Only by recognizing these historical patterns can we hope to break the cycle and create a world where power no longer shields predators from accountability. One of the key insights from Chapter 1 is that the abuse of power, whether through sex or violence, is not a new phenomenon. It's been a constant throughout history, evolving in its methods but never truly disappearing. The Marquis de Sade's era and our modern times share striking similarities in how power is misused. In both periods, we see the same structures that allow powerful men to act with impunity. The normalization of these power dynamics is precisely why figures like Sade, Weinstein, and Epstein were able to hide their abuses in plain sight for so long. Society often turns a blind eye to the misdeeds of the wealthy and influential, creating an environment where abuse can thrive. Another crucial insight is the way these powerful figures manipulate pleasure as a tool for pain. They use their status and resources to create situations where victims feel compelled to comply or are unable to speak out. This pattern repeats itself across centuries, from the aristocratic libertines of Sade's time to the Hollywood moguls and financiers of today. The book also delves into how these abusers often justify their actions through a distorted worldview. They see themselves as above societal norms and laws, much like Sade did in his writings and personal life. This sense of exceptionalism is a common thread linking historical and contemporary abusers. Understanding these historical connections is vital because it helps us recognize and combat these patterns in our own time. By studying the past, we can better identify the warning signs and work towards dismantling the systems that protect abusers. Have you ever wondered how these high-profile figures managed to evade justice for so long? It's a question that haunts us as we uncover more scandals. What is it about power and wealth that seems to grant immunity from the law? Is it the influence they wield, the connections they've built, or something deeper in our society? I want to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think allows these powerful individuals to hide their crimes in plain sight? How can we as a society work to change this pattern? Join the conversation on social media using the hashtags #PowerAbuse and #HistoryRepeats. Share your insights, experiences, or ideas for solutions. Let's start a dialogue about how we can stop these abuses of power and why understanding the historical context is crucial for making real change. Your voice matters in this conversation. By sharing your thoughts, you're contributing to a broader understanding of these complex issues. Together, we can work towards a future where power doesn't equal impunity. If you're intrigued by the connections between these historical and modern figures, I invite you to dive deeper into my book, Power, Pleasure, and Pain. What we've discussed today only scratches the surface of this complex and disturbing topic. In the rest of the book, we explore even more high-profile figures and scandals that have shaped our society. From Epstein's extensive connections with global elites to the lasting influence of Saad's philosophy on modern abuse cases, Power, Pleasure, and Pain offers a comprehensive look at how power has been wielded and abused throughout history. You'll gain insights into the psychology behind these actions and the societal structures that have allowed them to persist. By understanding these historical patterns, we can better recognize and combat abuse in our own time. The book doesn't just recount history. It provides a framework for identifying and addressing similar issues in the present day. Ready to uncover the full story of how power, pleasure, and pain have been manipulated throughout history? Head over to powerpleasurepainbook.com and get your copy now. Whether you prefer a physical book, ebook, or audiobook, you'll find a format that suits your needs. Don't miss this opportunity to arm yourself with knowledge and join the conversation about power dynamics in our society. Thanks for joining me today as we explored the dark legacy of figures like Marquis de Sade and his modern counterparts. We've seen how the abuse of power and exploitation has persisted throughout history, from 18th century France to today's headlines. Remember, this is just the beginning of our journey through power, pleasure, and pain. In our next episode, we'll delve into Chapter 2, uncovering more shocking connections between historical and contemporary abusers. Don't miss it. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast now. And if you're ready to dive deeper into this fascinating and disturbing world, grab your copy of Power, Pleasure, and Pain today. Together, we can continue this crucial conversation and work towards meaningful change in our society. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and let's make a difference. Power, Pleasure, and Pain. A study of abuse through time. This book provides a detailed examination of how sexual violence and power dynamics have manifested across different historical periods, from ancient civilizations to the modern era. It explores how figures in positions of power used their influence to manipulate and exploit others, showing that the patterns of abuse we see today have deep historical roots. Many people struggle to grasp why abuse of power, particularly sexual violence, persists in modern society. By connecting historical events with contemporary cases, the book offers crucial insights into why such behaviors remain prevalent. The book analyzes infamous cases such as those of Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, and Dominique Pellicotte, drawing parallels between them and historical figures. This section highlights how the systemic abuse seen in recent times is not a new phenomenon, but part of an ongoing cultural issue. Through the lens of these modern examples, readers will gain a better understanding of how institutions, wealth, and power have historically shielded perpetrators from justice, contributing to their ability to continue harming others. The book explores the philosophy of libertarianism, particularly through the works of Marquis de Sade, to explain the disturbing ways in which pleasure, power, and cruelty have been intertwined. This provides readers with a deeper philosophical context to interpret modern-day scandals. Unlike other studies that focus solely on historical or contemporary cases, this book uniquely blends both, offering a full spectrum of how abuse is tied to power dynamics. It stands out by making philosophical connections that help readers understand the deeper societal issues at play.